Please settle in now. Our service is about to begin. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Jersey Shore, a welcoming and inclusive faith community. Thank you for joining us. We who bring a teaching of hope, we who bring a saving message, who welcome all in our doors, the joyful, the heartbroken, atheists and Christians, Muslims and Jew, straight and gay, lesbian, bisexual, queer, transgender, all who are searching, seeking, looking for more meaning, more service, more love, all of us gathered here together. My name is Karen York, and I am your worship associate this morning. I'm a member of this congregation and currently serve on the Committee on Ministry, the Finance and Stewardship Committees, and I'm a frequent assistant in religious education. Our worship service today is led by Charles Loflin. Charles serves as the Executive Director of UU Faith Action, New Jersey. He is a 2021 graduate of Meadville Lombard Theological School, having earned a Master's of Divinity degree. He also holds a Master's of Fine Arts degree in acting from University of Louisville. Go Cardinals. Charles served the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship from 2019 to 2021 under the supervision of Reverend Allison Miller, a member of the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Montclair. He calls Montclair home. If you are new to our congregation, welcome. We would love to connect with you and help you to get to know our congregation better. If you're joining us live on Zoom, please visit the chat area of your screen and click on the visitor link to connect with our congregation. Video of the service and a printable copy of the sermon will be available on our website and Facebook page later today. If you care to tweet during today's service, you can use the hashtag UUCSJS. If you're hard of hearing, closed captioning of the whole service is available on the YouTube recording that will be posted this afternoon. If you'd like to follow along with the order of service, you can click on the link for that in the chat area of the screen. If you're joining from a computer or smartphone, you are encouraged to type joys or concerns in the chat box area on your screen. Please remember that this video will be on the internet, so do not share information best kept private. Welcome to worship.
Chegou, sorriu, venceu, depois chorou, então foi eu quem consolou sua tristeza na certeza de que o amor tem 10 fases mais. Que bom para fazer as pazes, mas depois foi eu quem dela precisou. Então me socorreu, eu não sou mostrou que veio pra ficar mais uma vez por toda a vida. Vou mesmo mal em paz, brigas nunca mais. Chegou, sorriu, venceu, depois chorou, então fui eu quem consolou sua tristeza na certeza de que o amor tem 10 fases mais. mais que eu não para fazer as pazes, mas depois fui eu quem deu a precisão. Ela então me socorreu e o nosso monstro que veio pra ficar mais uma vez por toda a vida. Com eu mesmo, mais em paz, brigas nunca mais. Depois fui eu quem deu a precisão. Ela então me socorreu e o nosso monstro que veio pra ficar mais uma vez por toda a vida. Com eu mesmo, mais em paz, brigas nunca mais.
Welcome, you who come in need of healing, you who are confused or who have been betrayed. Welcome with your problems and your pain. Welcome to your joys and your wonderings. Welcome your need to hope, your longing for assurance. Instead of answers, here may you find safety for your questions. Instead of promises, may you find community for your struggles. People with hands and hearts to join you in engaging the challenges and changes of our day. Our chalice lighting this morning will be Faithless Works by Jennifer Wong, and Laura Kushner, a guest who's visiting us, will read that, make that reading.
Faithless Works by Jennifer Kwong. They say faith without works is dead. So I worked for equality next to my queer friends who wanted to get married. And I worked for religious freedom next to my Muslim friends who were accused of being terrorists. And I worked for racial justice next to my Black friends whose lives were affected by brutality. Yet, I didn't feel fully alive even after working myself to death until I let my work become a spiritual practice, until I let go of my attachment to the outcome, until I stopped chasing after political issues one after another. I still believe without works, I still believe faith without works is dead, but works without faith is just lifeless.
Thank you. Please join us in singing along to our gathering hymn, Love Will Guide Us. During this next musical interlude, we invite you to write your joys and sorrows in the chat portion of your Zoom screen. The icon will either be on the top or bottom of your screen, and it will allow you to enter text into the panel where others can see it. At the end of the musical interlude, I will read what you would share with the congregation gathered here today. Please remember that a recording of today's service will be available on the internet. So as a reminder, please do not share things that ought not to be posted on the internet for eternity. Each week we gather in this space with things that weigh upon our hearts and minds. Some bring us joy we wish to share with others, and some bring us sorrow that weigh heavy on our hearts. I will now read what joys and sorrows you would share with this community. We are holding Gina and her family in our hearts after the passing of her father this week. Melissa is joyful for the Winter Olympic Games. I have been enjoying that also. Charles shares that he lifts up healing prayers for his sister-in-law, Sarah. Let us be in a spirit of prayer. For the people of Minneapolis and the family of 22-year-old Amir Locke, who was shot and killed by a SWAT team of police serving a no-knock warrant less than 2 years after Minneapolis police killed George Floyd. For those in Philadelphia whose lives are disrupted again and again by gun violence. For this congregation and its leaders as we navigate the change in ministry that is on our horizon, may we show each other respect and grace and compassion, remembering that though we have different points of view, we share common values. We hold in our hearts Kathleen Hartnett, who is in rehab. May she be blessed with healing and strength. We pray for those who are apart from us, whether by distance, time, or conflict unresolved. We pray for those who thirst, whether for water, dignity, or justice. And we pray for our small, blue, fragile planet. Amen.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
We will now take a moment to give and receive the morning offering. Since we can't pass a basket over Zoom, we have the next best thing, ways to donate online. In the chat area of your Zoom screen, you'll find ways to give over the web, by text, and our postal address if you'd like to mail a check. If you are not joining us live on Zoom, you can visit our website at uucsjs.org and click on the yellow donate button to donate via text donate a donation. You can dial the number 609-293-4495. Or you can always mail a check to the P.O. Box. No matter how you support us, we appreciate you and your generous heart. After all, your donations is what keeps us going. Each Unitarian Universalist congregation is self-supporting, and 80% of our funds come from you. No matter how those gifts are offered, they are always most gratefully received.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Today's reading is an excerpt from Sarah Gibb Milsau's Shifting from Fear to Faith. What would Unitarian Universalism be like if we lived from our faith more than we lived from our fears? And when I say we, I mean each of us and each of our Unitarian Universalist institutions. What would we be like if our minds, our hearts, our spirits shifted from fear to faith? First, let's talk about fear. We are living in a country where our fears are stoked daily. And our UU institutions are feeling this fear too. When we are fearful, we think more narrowly. We are deeply sensitive to the possibility of threat and highly alert to the possibility of loss. Conflicts become all or nothing. We dig in our heels. Change, even positive ones, like congregations growing or becoming more multiculturally inclusive, feel unwelcome and anxiety-provoking. How do we move into this place of faith? First, I need to clear some things up with you about the word. Here, I'm talking about faith we can have in one another as people, and a sense of faith that grounds our spirituality. Spirituality is not the same as spiritual certainty. The kind of faith I'm talking about is not the same as belief in the improbable supernatural thing or a belief that everything works out for the best. The kind of faith I'm talking about is born out of our own deepest experiences. As Buddhist teacher Shannon Salzberg writes, our personal and congregational faith comes from our truest experiences, our deepest selves, and our interdependence with all. When we live our faith, we trust our own deepest experiences and place our hearts there. Even though we may still feel fear, faith gives us courage, binding us to our hearts, truth, helping us move forward with creativity and hope. I wonder what our congregations could be like if we followed this principle from Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism Working Agreement. Hope before fear. We put hope, desire, and longing at the center of our thinking and work, instead of and before. Working out of fear. This means when in doubt, we are on the side of trusting each other as leaders and building trust with the other people we work with. What if we operate from faith more than fear?
Good morning. Thank you, Laura, so much for that. Laura is the ministerial intern at UU Faith Action, New Jersey, and she is a student at Drew University pursuing her Master of Divinity degree. And I'm grateful for you being here, Laura, and thank you for sharing those beautiful words. My name is Charles Loflin, and it is a distinct pleasure to be able to speak with you today in my capacity as Executive Director for UU Faith Action, New Jersey. I want to especially thank Reverend Dawn for the invitation to be with you today and the opportunity to share a bit about the work that we are doing for social justice across the state. I'm hoping too that I can take this opportunity to express my deepest thanks to you, the UU congregation of the South Jersey Shore, for your ongoing support of UU Faith Action. If you are learning about UU Faith Action for the first time, I hope that maybe you'll consider ways of getting more directly involved in the work that we're doing. And I also have today some thoughts that I'd like to share about you about why I believe that we as Unitarian Universalists, especially when it comes to the work of social justice, are being called in this moment to reject fear in favor of faith. So that's a lot of ground to cover, so we should get right to it. First, I want to begin by sharing a little bit about the history of UU Faith Action, especially for those who may not be familiar. Back in 2006, it was the UU congregation of Princeton that conducted a congregational survey around the commitments of the members to social justice. And one of the projects that came from that effort was the need to establish the UU Legislative Ministries of New Jersey, known then as UULMNJ. Boy, we like our long titles and acronyms. Today, UULMNJ is known as UU Faith Action New Jersey. It's a little shorter. But from its inception, the organization was envisioned as a collaboration among and between all of the New Jersey UU congregations, with the intent to advocate for UU values in the public square, and most especially within the New Jersey State Legislature. By 2008, the organization established a two-pronged mission. One was a ministry dedicated to education and research on social justice issues, and the other was coordinating grassroots advocacy and establishing public policy via legislation. It was in 2010 that the organization established what is its current operation model, which is organizing around the idea of individual task forces. These task forces collaborate with congregational teams as well as other organizations around priority issues. Today, UU Faith Action is organized around the following task forces. There's a criminal justice task force, an environmental justice task force, a gun violence prevention task force, an immigration justice task force, a reparations task force, which is our newest task force, reproductive justice task force. And in addition to our task forces, we also have an organization we call FAIR. FAIR stands for Faith Action Inclusivity Representatives. And this is our youth-led caucus that is working on inclusivity issues, particularly in the educational system in New Jersey. In 2017, the board adopted what is now the current mission statement for UU Faith Action. It reads, "Grounded in our Unitarian Universalist faith, we are confronting systemic injustice and building a more compassionate society in New Jersey by educating ourselves and others on social and political issues, mobilizing individuals and congregations to act for justice, and advocating for equitable and sustainable public policy. Thanks to the ongoing participation and the financial support of our 21 member congregations and individual donors, UU Faith Action provides both the advocacy and the legislative leadership that make a real difference on issues of equity and justice, but also to help us build wider alliances between frontline communities, advocacy groups, legislators, and key coalitions across the state." In our vision statement, we say, "We envision a just New Jersey, free from systemic oppression and greed, full of engaged people, committed to each other, to our communities, and to the earth." That's a big vision to live into. To facilitate communication between our member congregations and our organization, we encourage each of our congregations to appoint 1 or 2 liaisons who are the interface between us. And I want to recognize Janet Longo, who is serving as a congregational liaison to UU Faith Action for your congregation, and we thank her for her service. Additionally, UU Faith Action is led by our board of trustees, comprised of members from affiliated congregations and religious professionals who are serving affiliated congregations, who bring their remarkable expertise to this work. So it's a little bit of a pitch. I am here to tell you some ways of how you can get involved with UU Faith Action. One of the simplest is to join our mailing list, which you can do by visiting our website at uufaithaction.org. At the very top of that page, there's a link where you can sign up for email and text alerts. This allows us to send an alert, such as when there's action to take on particular legislation, such as contacting state legislators to indicate support or opposition to specific bills. These action alerts are often very time sensitive, but they have a real impact on the legislators and on the legislation that gets passed. Additionally, we send out occasional education alerts where we will share information about workshops, book reads, other opportunities related to social justice issues that are happening. In fact, currently, we have just announced our UU Faith Action Common Read for the state of New Jersey, and it's sponsored by our reparations task force. We're encouraging folks to read a fabulous book called The Social Life of DNA. And there are going to be opportunities to participate in discussions with other UUs across the state. You can find out more information about that on our website as well. But by signing up to receive these email and text alerts, that's really the best way to make sure that you're in the know about the upcoming UU Faith Action events and activities. Our standard events include an upcoming gala, which will be held on April 9th, our annual meeting, which will be held in May, and in the fall of each year, we hold an issues conference where each of our task forces can talk about the priorities and the issues that are most relevant. Another way to get involved is to participate in our task forces. If there's a task force that speaks to you in terms of your call to social justice work as an individual UU, I invite you to get involved. Each of our task forces meets monthly via Zoom. to discuss both the issues and the legislation that are related to the task force. You can find detailed information about each task force on our website, and there's contact information there so that our task force chairs can provide you with the details about the upcoming meetings. The task forces really provide terrific opportunities to connect with UUs from other congregations and to build relationships with allied group and coalition partners. And it can be a lot of fun. And as I mentioned earlier, congregational liaisons fill a vitally important role of being that primary conduit between Faith Action and the congregations. Liaisons help us to communicate, and they not only keep a congregation updated on the events and the issues that are happening at Faith Action, but they also share the social justice activities that are happening in the congregation so that we can be good coalition partners and help to promote those events. For example, we have a community calendar on our website where we are happy to promote your social justice activities that are happening within your congregation. We want to build the strongest possible relationship with each congregation as we work together to do the work of social justice throughout the state. Also, if perhaps you have a potential interest in serving on our board of trustees, I would love to have a conversation about that with you as well. And a final way to be involved that's very critical to our ongoing work is through individual financial support. Each affiliated congregation is asked to make an annual contribution based on the number of members. And that's a major source of our funding, but we are also reliant on individuals who choose to support us directly. It is most especially helpful in these days for those who are able to make recurring monthly donations, as this provides a consistent revenue stream that helps tremendously in terms of the budgeting process. But again, we and I are so grateful for those who are already involved in the work of Faith Action. And we welcome anyone else who wants to learn more to get involved to the call for social justice. After all, it's right there in our name. We strive to help New Jersey UUs put their faith into action. And that leads me directly to the reflection that I wanted to share with you today. Faith in action. You know, I've been thinking a lot recently on the work of social justice within Unitarian Universalism and where we find ourselves in this particular moment. These last couple of years of navigating through what it means to be a religious community in the midst of a pandemic, they have been hard. And they have left many congregations asking some existential questions, questions about who we are, what we do, how we do it. And moreover, it has required us to consider each of those answers to those questions and to others in multiple contexts. What does it mean to be a particular congregation in a particular place? Your context is not the same as every other context. And what does it mean in the larger context of community? What is the impact when we think of larger circles? What is the impact when we think of our identity as Unitarian Universalists at the state level, or as a region, or as a national movement? You know, it seems to me that the greatest challenge of our time is the question of how we will keep from being overwhelmed by fear. I mean, if we're completely honest, there certainly seems to be a lot for which to be legitimately fearful these days. I know through the pandemic, I've personally experienced sort of waves of fear. The fear that I myself would catch COVID, the fear for the safety of my immediate family, and then my extended family, especially those who live in other parts of the country that didn't seem to be taking the pandemic very seriously. And even after being vaccinated, there was a long period when I feared for my teenager who wasn't yet eligible for vaccination. And plus, don't even get me started on the fear around the impact the pandemic has had on my teens' education. And even today, I have enormous concerns for my own extended family who have children too young for vaccination. My heart continues to go out to all those parents everywhere for whom this has not only been an ongoing concern, but an existential crisis. As a parent, you want to protect your children, but it seems so hard to do that. And perhaps my greatest pandemic fear is that there are so many people who still seem unwilling to take common sense precautions. And I fear that as a result, the threat of potentially more variants to come is very real. And folks, if the global pandemic wasn't enough in and of itself, these last years have included massive concern in so many areas. Systemic racial injustice, the Black Lives Matter movement, targeted oppression against marginalized communities, catastrophic climate change, and a profoundly inequitable economic system. And all of this has been happening in what is perhaps the most politically polarized environment imaginable. An environment that has literally spawned a rebirth of authoritarianism and nothing less than attempted insurrection. I have to remind myself that all of these things and more describe not what has already happened as in past tense, as in we're past it, but what is happening as in the present tense. This is the reality of our moment. This is our now. This is our real time. It seems like there's a lot of fear to go around. And when we live in a world that is so eager to stoke our fears on a daily basis, how do we cope? I'm particularly interested in how, in this environment of fear, how will that impact our Unitarian Universalist congregations and institutions? And especially, what impact is that going to have on our commitment to social justice work? And friends, let me be perfectly clear here. Social justice work has been a part of Unitarian Universalism from its beginning, and even before its beginning in the work of our Unitarian and Universalist forebears. But it has also been a source of tension within and among our congregations. And I deeply believe that Unitarian Universalism at its core genuinely demands work for social justice. The UU theologian James Luther Adams said, right attitudes are never sufficient alone. They must find embodiment in social institutions. If I can paraphrase that a little bit, what I would say that James Luther Adams is getting at is we are not going to live into our faith if it's all about believing individually what we think is our truth. If it is not translated into an embodied institution that actually impacts the world around us, then I'm not sure it has much of a point. In a time like ours of heightened anxiety, congregational fears that social justice actions may lead to division and conflict can be magnified in terribly disproportionate ways. It can manifest in fear-based responses where we err on the side of inaction or potentially making decisions that are counter to the core values of Unitarian Universalism. When we are uncertain about the ambiguity in which we live and are unclear about what may happen next, it's so easy to give in to fear. You know, over the last few decades, researchers around how fear impacts our assessment of risk have been particularly telling. You see, fear is problematic, especially when it becomes disproportionate to the actual risk involved. Fear and an environment of fear can lead to an overestimation of the risk of catastrophic outcome. We can become our own worst enemies, and our minds can play tricks on us, imagining the worst possible scenario for the future. And that is a response to the fear in which we move that is churning all around us. We want things to be simple. We want them to be known. We want them to be easier to navigate. And I would argue that perhaps the most dangerous kind of fear are those fears that remain unspoken. You see, when we aren't able to process our fears, when we aren't able to name them, when we aren't able to examine them openly, they can grow out of control. And this leads directly to catastrophic thinking, where we assume the worst case scenario, and we can believe that things are much worse than they actually are, because we're responding to fear with fear. In a time of fear, we are more susceptible for longing for a return to what was comfortable. There is the danger and a nostalgia for a falsely idealized past that we imagine as being free from ambiguity, free from anxiety, free from turmoil. It was simpler. Why can't we go back to that? But it's a false idealization. So what is the alternative? What do we do? How do we cope with fear? And my suggestion is that the best response to fear, especially for a religious community, is embracing the life-affirming faith. That's the alternative. As we heard in the reading from Sarah Gibb Millspaw, Shifting from Fear to Faith, spiritual faith is not the same as spiritual certainty. This is not magical thinking. It's not denial of reality. And it's certainly not simply ignoring our fears and not talking about them. It is a faith that is born out of our direct experience. It must be informed by the values that we affirm and promote. It is a faith that says we cannot know exactly what religious community is going to look like as we continue to move through this pandemic. We cannot possibly know. But our commitment to one another can guide us. It is a faith that says, because we hold to the inherent worth and dignity of every single individual, and because we hold to the principles of justice, equity, and compassion, that we will continue to side with those who are most marginalized. This is not a time to turn inward. We need a life-affirming faith that in the presence of fear double downs on dismantling white supremacy culture and building multicultural beloved community. Friends, we need a faith that will strive to err on the side of action rather than inaction. Fear will mislead us. It will bring us to break our vows, our commitments of living into our highest values. But faith, liberating faith, can lead us back to relationship, back to community, back to creating the world we dream about. It doesn't remove the fear, but it allows us to examine the fear in the context of community, in the context of faith in one another. May we be worthy of that faith. May we be committed not to live in fear. May it indeed be so.
And now, as you go on your way, take care, take care. The on your way. Take care, take care. The love, all the love that you seek is there. It's there. Love flows through our words and deeds. Love knows all the things we need. Love grows as our hearts are freed from hatred, fear, and pain. Take care as you go on your way until we meet again.
Our closing words are from Audre Lorde. When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. Thank you, Charles, so much. That was very inspiring. Let us take a moment to read the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Seen. You thought playing it safe would make all your dreams come true, or so it seemed. Forget all the lessons, you know them by heart. Now the time has arrived to put into action. Listen with your heart. No one knows when love will arrive. Open your eyes, jump in on a limb. Come dangle with me. The water is warm. Come swim in my love. The moment's approaching. The time has drawn near, and the love that you long for is waiting patiently. Don't let your fear, don't let it keep you from taking the risk that love needs. It reminds every taker to find love's fruit. You've got to go out on a limb. No one knows when love will arrive. Open your eyes, jump in on a limb. Come dangle with me, loving deliciously. Sun is on the rise.
We have some announcements this morning. Join our annual Super Bowl Sunday Tamale benefit to support Eastern Service Workers Association Winter Survival Campaign as they organize distributions of supplemental food, blankets, heaters, and winter clothing, conduct winter watch to stay in contact with elderly and disabled members, and fight profiteering policies like state-approved utility rate hikes. You may order your tamales and pay online or contact Colby Tippins. The information was in the midweek announcements that was sent out. The tamales can be picked up next Sunday from 12 to 2. So the time is 12 to 2. It would be after the normal Sunday service. Our Sunday service will be on Zoom again next Sunday. But later in the afternoon, after the service, you can pick up your tamale orders. Colby will be there with the orders. Reverend DC Fortune and representatives of the board will be present to engage in a listening session after worship on Sunday, February 20th. At that point, we hope to be back in the building. They will be there to hear thoughts and questions about the transition from called ministry to what the future holds. On February 27th, there will be a special meeting of the congregation at the UU Center immediately following the Sunday service for the purpose of considering the highway signage proposals described in the announcements that have gone out by email, and any other business that may come before the congregation. We know you've been missing the UU's favorite part of Sunday services, so we have a plan to get back into the swing of things. On Sunday, February 20th, you are welcome to bring your favorite beverage in your favorite travel mug and join us under the tent on the North Lawn to socialize outside after services. This is an outdoor activity. Masks are encouraged but not required. Hope the weather is good for us and that you will participate. The UUC SJS Board of Trustees meets this Thursday, February 10th at 7 p.m. on Zoom. All are welcome to attend. Please take the opportunity to keep virtually connected. There are some other events going on this week. Heartfulness meditation is daily, Buddhist Sangha on Tuesdays, the Board of Trustees meeting on Thursday that I just mentioned, and Everyday Spirituality on Saturday. We will be meeting in the building. If you need to schedule a meeting or event, please reach out to the admin at admin@uucsjs.org for use of the Zoom room or to be added to the calendar. Join us next week for worship as we learn how Unitarian Universalist leaders spent 3 years studying white supremacist culture and how it runs through all parts of our denomination, from the national level down to the smallest committees in our congregations. What does it look like to be truly welcoming? How do we go beyond welcome to inclusion? We will find out with Reverend DC and his sermon, Embracing All That Is Colorful. We warmly welcome all of you who are visiting us today. Please click on the visitor link in the chat area to connect with our congregation. We invite you all to stay here and socialize in our online social time so we can get to know each other better. Now let us share in a moment of silent reflection to consider today's message and the meaning it has in our lives. Those of you